he talked about the prophets like Christ and Moses and Abraham, people that had fasted, Elijah that had fasted, and it overlaps a Sabbath. So let me just express real quick. I mean, this is exactly what Christ talked about in Matthew 12, where the priests work in the temple but are held guiltless. They work in the temple on the Sabbath. That's what they've been required to do. That is their job. That is their vocation. They get their resources from the people as being a priest in the temple. And their job is to work on the Sabbath. And Christ even tells us, we'll go to the passage. So Christ is even explaining this concept of, have you not read in the law? On the Sabbath, the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are innocent. But I tell you that something greater than temples here. So why do they break the Sabbath? Because they've been commanded to work on the day that people show up for the sacred assemblies for the Sabbaths. Not just the weekly, but also the quarterly moons, all the feasts of Yahweh. They're commanded to be there to receive the sacrifices of people and do their job. So they are profaning the Sabbath by definition, because that's their job, that's their vocation. They're told to do it. So God told people, do not work on the Sabbath, and then he told the Levites, work on the Sabbath. Is God contradictory? Or is God explaining his system to you? Hey, my ministers, they're going to work on this day to facilitate what needs to be done. But they're not held guilty for breaking the Sabbath or profaning it. In the same way, a prophet of God, who just as all of Israel was given the general instruction to keep the Sabbaths, if God tells him, go out and fast and get alone to get with me, that was the point of them separating themselves from the people, was to draw closer to God in a fast. If he's telling the prophet to do that, that's going to supersede the regular general instruction to keep the Sabbaths. Just like the priest's instruction, which they're literally drawing near to the Father in his temple, and to facilitate other people drawing near to the Father in his temple in order to do their job. So a prophet is then called to a fast for whatever reason, like Moses for 40 days and 40 nights is on the mountain. Several Sabbaths would be lapsing. That's fine. Has a direct command by the Father, which supersedes the general command, which is to draw near to the Father. So this whole concept that, well, how could all these prophets like, Moses, Elijah, Abraham, Ezra, Christ, how could they be called to this Sabbath called to this days of fasting that overlaps the Sabbath when you can't fast on the Sabbath? It's very simple. They also are missing the sacred assemblies. They're also missing the instruction to work 6 days a week. They're also missing a lot of other things, because God's command to them supersedes all that, because he's got a specific mission for them. Does that make any sense? They're actually drawing closer to the Father for the purpose of doing this. And we have a specific ongoing example of this with the priesthood. The Levites, every week, break the Sabbath and are not held guilty, because it's a part of facilitating a direct command of God that supersedes the general command. I hope that makes sense. We have literally a precedent, long-standing, instructed in the edited canon of 66, affirmed by Christ himself. A direct command supersedes the general command if you have to break the Sabbath. Now, listen, for everyone out there listening to me, I'm not giving you license. This is not me saying you have license to run out there and say, oh, you know what? God told me to break the Sabbath this week. No, you're not a priest. You're not a prophet. And if you are, you better be able to back it up, and you better understand how strict of a responsibility that is. So there's, because this is basically, these guys were held to an extremely strict standard of obedience to Yahweh, and they facilitated obedience to Yahweh through other people, to get other people to obey the general command of keep the Sabbath again, or keep his feast again. So that's enough. Hopefully that's enough on that topic.